Radishes take 7 months, 7 times longer than a food plant. Radish plants get to be this tall and this big around. So it is a very different thing for the timing, for the weed control, for fertility, water, anything like that.
And remember, this 60-acre farm in Vermont is putting out seeds to be sold all across the country in very different environments. So the seeds have to grow not just here, but wherever the customer is ordering from.
We don't want to find the variety of tomato that just works for Georgia or just works for Southern California. We want to find one that works in both places. Plus, if you've lived in Georgia or you've lived in California, you lived anywhere for 5 years or more, the weather is nuts. It's changing all the time. So a variety that might be selected and bred for Georgia, which Georgia? The Georgia of today, the Georgia of 20 years ago, or the Georgia of 20 years ahead of now? So if we can find varieties and breed varieties that have that long-term robustness and resilience like a workhorse, not a fancy prima donna racehorse, but something that is sturdy and rugged and can withstand different conditions, whatever climate change is throwing at it, then we've got a winner.
That means lots of experimental planting. Taylor Maida is the trials manager, testing different varieties of the same crop, evaluating which seeds perform best in various conditions, choosing which new seed varieties will be added to the High Mowing catalog, and making sure the rest of the High Mowing staff really knows what they're growing and selling.
Our sales staff, they come out on a weekly sales walk. And so they'll come out and look at what's ready, or new ads that we've decided to add, then they become familiar with them firsthand.
Everyone at High Mowing does a few different jobs, so everyone is knowledgeable about the product. Paul Betts' title is sales manager, but he's also intimately involved with the trial gardens and growing the plants that produce the seeds he sells.
You're wearing a lot of hats basically here at High Mowing.
Very true.
But one of the things that you're definitely involved in a lot is in collaborating on the trial side and coming up with those things to determine what is that next great variety.
Yep.
Things like that.
Yeah, and that's an offshoot of our product development process. And so annually we'll come through and kind of look at the catalog, look at the assortment, and find what we call kind of the soft spots where we want another variety to fit a slot that we don't have, or if there's a variety that's underperforming. And we'll use those guidelines to come up with the trials plan. And Taylor, who's our trials manager, will then go and work with vendors who may have a variety that we haven't seen yet, or have one that's coming down the road, or work with other independent breeders and kind of assemble what's going to be in the trials, and then we plant it out, and Taylor and I do the evaluations as the season unfolds.
So as a grower to High Mowing Seeds, there's a lot of quality control steps through the entire process, right?
Right, starting with the right stock seed, which is the seeds that you're growing the plants to produce the seed crop. And then ultimately there's always going to be a little bit of genetic drift within the seed. And so part of the job of the grower is to go through and rogue out the plants that look a little bit different. And it's called roguing. You remove those seeds, remove those plants, from the system.
Is genetic drift seed that got into that batch from a prior harvest, or what is that?
Well, if you're combining lots of different genetics into a plant, there's all kinds of like little recessive traits within any given seed. And sometimes they come up in a way that represents an off type, or a sport is another name for them. And so your job as the seeds person is to remove those and keep the seed that you're producing being true to type. In the field, you're going to be looking for how the plants hold up to disease. You're going to want to remove any infected plants that are going down from disease. You're going to want to remove any plants that are showing stress that's causing them to prematurely bolt, because you don't want that trait to be carried on into the genetics that you're selecting for. And then post-harvest, we would be looking at germination and vigor, and that happens in the lab at the warehouse.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I know bolting on these leaf crops and cool season crops, a lot of people want to know, how do they slow down the bolting process? And one of the ways, based on what you've just said, is to select varieties that are slower to bolt. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, and can handle higher stress. If you think about what the plant's doing when it's bolting, it's trying, the whole point of a plant is to grow and make seeds.
Yes.
And so part of the bolting process is the plant feels threatened. And so that threat translates into the life is getting a little tough, and so now it's time to make some seeds. And so if you can do anything to reduce the stress that plant is under,
right,
that will prolong how long it will grow before it starts to bolt.
Oh, right.
I always tell people to think like a plant, and your job as a grower or a gardener is to create like the easiest environment for the plant to grow in.
What a great analogy.
Yeah.
But as simple as it seems, creating an easy environment for things to grow in has proven to be exceptionally difficult for the human race. And Tom Stearns hopes the little company that started as a backyard hobby can help turn the tide.
We can't really blame humanity too much for screwing up as much as we've had, because we didn't really know a whole lot for a whole bunch of years. Like, we didn't mess this planet up 1,000 years ago, really, because we weren't big enough to do it. But we have for the last few hundred years because we didn't really understand ecology and how that works. Well, we don't have that excuse anymore. Now there's a whole bunch of billions of us, and we understand ecology and science. We don't have any excuse for doing the damage that we're doing now. So if we want this habitable planet to be something that's thriving with humans on it long term, we need to refigure out a whole bunch of things. Energy and agriculture are the two biggest ones, in my mind. If you look at causes of conflicts around the world, even for the last 500 years, they've been around food and energy. Maybe there's been salt, or maybe it's been cod, or maybe it's been oil, or whatever it is. Control of land, how we farm, how we eat. Most of the damage done to this planet is done in the name of this food system that we have not designed. We have stumbled with the hangover and say, okay, we got to clean up this mess. So this new food system that we need to create needs to think deeply about how we take care of the soil, the water, the air, what tools we use, what fuel we use, what types of seeds we use, what the nutrition is that goes into the soil and then into the food and then into people. And so this new food system that I feel driven to be a part of changing through these seeds is something that I think has a global effect and a global requirement. If we don't try, we're losing our capacity to grow food here. We're destroying soil in the process of doing it. So there are a whole lot of aspects of the new food system, and it's not all just about organic agriculture, and it's not all just about farming scale. It could be growing food indoors, it could be growing food on your rooftops, it could be growing food in small ways all over the place. But it is the single biggest way that we engage with this earth, and we are doing it wrong. There's no arguments about that among people. We just need the courage to figure out the new ways of doing it.
You know, as gardeners, we tend to get so caught up in the growing process with our eye towards the finish line, coaxing those plants along to maybe the biggest flower blooms or the best tasting tomato or maybe a higher yield than last year. But maybe we should turn our attention to the front end, because it all starts with the seeds. And as we learned today, not all seeds are created equal. So maybe that's where we start the questions, like where did the seed come from and who's growing it and how was it treated and how were the plants treated before the seeds were even harvested? Tom Stearns may have started with a few seeds in his backyard, but he's grown a lot more than a thriving business. And he's doing a big part for growing a greener world. If you'd like to learn more about high mowing organic seeds, we have that information on our website under the show notes for this episode. And the website address, that's the same as our show name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Joe Lample, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World.
Growing a Greener World is made possible in part by
built in a zero landfill plant, so you can roam the earth with a lighter footprint. Subaru. proud sponsor of Growing a Greener World.
And the following.
You're watching Northern California Public Media, made possible by viewers like you.
If you commit this act, you will never, ever be a poet.
There were people I had been told who had vowed that Jimmy Santiago Baca will not get out of this prison except feet first.
Society said, we're gonna stop you, man. We're gonna stop you and put you in this cell. But what they did was they lit the fuse. In its furthest dimensions, its furthest reaches, echoed with the sense that I will give you meaning. I will give your chaos order.
Monday night at 9 on Northern California Public Media.
This month in Passport, your on-demand library of the best of PBS.
She was the Queen's sister, but she did things nobody else in the royal family had done.
When you get that relationship with a horse, sky is the limit of what you can do.
Your fourth great-grandfather knew Thomas Jefferson.
This is blowing my mind.
These and other shows are available with Passport. Become a member of this PBS station, sign in, and start streaming today.
I am the sailor on horseback. Watch my dust. Oh, I shall make mistakes of many, but watch my dreams come true. Try to dream with me my dreams of fruitful acres. Do not be a slave to an old conception. Try to realize what I am after.
There's so much beauty here, and there is so much pain.
I've already been to detox about 8 or 9 times.
I wanted to be someplace where our physicians were really needed.
I started creating health career clubs in all of our local schools.
I'm not mad at you. I'll never get mad at you. My job is to try to keep you alive.
Healthcare is a relationship.
The Providers.
Join Northern California Public Media for an Indie Lens pop-up, a free screening of the film The Providers, Tuesday, April 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Rialto Cinemas, Elmwood in Berkeley.
Singer-songwriter Susan Werner tackles the issues facing rural life with her powerful lyrics.
Egg is hot. Food is hot. Where does food come from? It just seemed like fertile territory for writing and songwriting.
NET Television followed Werner as she toured Nebraska performing The Land Will Outlive Us All.
I just gotta get back to the land.
Tuesday night at 9 on Northern California Public Media.
Connect the Bay is made possible in part by the North Bay Leadership Council and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the premiere of Connect the Bay from Northern California Public Media. I'm your host, Steve Mencher. Our subject today is housing, and it gives us the chance to misquote the immortal New York Yankee catcher Yogi Berra. When it comes to housing in the Bay Area, he might have said, our region is so crowded that nobody can afford to live here anymore. Here's a cartoon we liked from the past week or so. Everybody's leaving the Bay because of troubles with transportation, housing, politics, homelessness. And here's the headline that went along with that cartoon in the San Jose Mercury News: is the Bay Area pushing people to the breaking point? Then there was this: Bay Area voters, yes, we'll pay to fix traffic, but middling support for housing plan. More about that housing plan in a moment. But we're looking for your questions and concerns, and here's Darren Lachelle from our social media desk to tell you how to be in touch.
Hi, thanks, Steve. You can get in touch with us now via email at connectthebay@norcalpublicmedia.org. Also, you can call us right now at our toll-free number, 1-800-287-2722, and find us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at NorCal Public Media. Now, we have a few questions that have come in that I want to go over for you. One is, since the 1990s, multi-story residential building has taken place on every available lot in the South Bay. Yet this has not lowered prices. So why would adopting the same strategy everywhere be different? And that's from Kat Johnson from Facebook. Also, we have Maritza Hernandez who says, what options do undocumented individuals have for affordable housing? And how can we produce more affordable housing options for undocumented individuals and people of color? And Steve, finally, we have a question. How can we find affordable housing in Sonoma County? All of the housing here is too expensive. And that's from Annabelle Garcia from a Low CN community event that we partnered on. So some really good questions coming in, Steve, and hopefully more to come.
Thanks, and we hope to get some of these answered. But we're going to start by digging into that housing plan that Bay Area residents were asked about. It's called the CASA Compact. And CASA is not an acronym. It stands for the Committee to House the Bay Area. It's a group convened by the MTC and ABAG. And for those of you who aren't regional planning nerds, that's the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Association of Bay Area Governments. And we're joined by David Rabbitt. He's the current president of ABAG, and he's also chair of the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors. David, can you tell us a little bit about the background of the CASA Compact, why it was written, and what kind of a document is it?
Yeah, CASA really started, excuse me, CASA started in about 2008. 2008, the State Sustainable Community Strategies Plan came out, where we were supposed to make sure that our housing, land use, and transportation coincided with our greenhouse gas reduction goals. In the Bay Area, we cannot make that happen. CASA was actually identified within that first Plan Bay Area plan that was from 2013 as a way to look at housing, saying that the status quo doesn't work, we need to do something different.
All right, now if the status quo doesn't work, what are some of the ideas that you came up with in terms of this CASA Compact?
I think the greatest thing about CASA was getting everyone in the same room. People who really, excuse me, who really blamed one another for the impasse at housing in the Bay Area. You know, the Bay Area has housing costs that are 2.5 times the national average. There are rent-burdened people in every county, everywhere. There are people commuting long distances to their jobs. We just have a very expensive system that's not getting any better. It's only getting worse. So getting those people in the same room to actually come up with a consensus document where no one was really satisfied with the outcome of every element, but they were happy to say that they could agree to the piece as a whole and send it off to Sacramento and see if Sacramento can make legislation that would change the status quo.
All right, now David, the Mercury News headline about middling support for CASA missed what I think was the real headline of the story. We have a poll, and it said 53% of homeowners opposed the plan, 32% supported it. But for renters, those numbers were flipped. 62% were in favor, 25% opposed. And another number we were interested in was that the younger people, 18 to 39, they were for it. But as people got older, they were against it. So let's talk about those first 3 points of CASA, which are the first 3 points about renters. One of them was just cause eviction policy, emergency rent cap, and emergency rent assistance and access to legal counsel. Those are for renters, right?
Those are for renters. So what CASA really followed 3 Ps, and it's protection, those 3 elements right there, preservation of the existing housing stock that we have that's affordable, and then production.
Okay, that's fabulous. Now, we're going to see in just a few minutes, we're going to see a video about renting here in Sonoma County, and something I know that you're very concerned with. And there's also Derica Merens will be joining us, and Randy Tsuda of Palo Alto Housing, later John Deloso of Katati. So here is a video that we'd like to show about what it means to rent in Sonoma County.
I'm Adia White, reporting for Northern California Public Media. Santa Rosa currently has a less than 3% rental vacancy rate. Those that have housing are often unwilling to jeopardize it, even if this means renting a unit that is unsafe. Nonprofit Sonoma County Legal Aid Society offers free legal assistance.
The tenants here have called legal aid to come and investigate some serious habitability issues in this house. At the moment, there is no gas supply, which means that there's no hot running water and there is no stove or ability to cook food. In addition, there are many holes in the wall, the ceilings, and in the floor, which allow rats and cockroaches to enter.
Hace como, sí, aproximadamente un año que uno me mordió. Sí. A mi hermana también la mordió del pie, le mordió un dedo. A mí lo que fue la mejilla.
A local neighborhood group, Roseland Community Building Initiative, decided to confront this issue. Many of the members have personally experienced the difficulty of wrestling with their landlord over repairs while also trying to keep their housing.
Tengo 11 años viviendo en Santa Rosa y me ha tocado rentar en unos departamentos. Ya tenía 4 años rentando. En el tiempo de octubre, noviembre, diciembre, enero, hay mucho mojo en el techo, en las paredes, por humedad que tienen las casas, que necesitan hacer los dueños de los departamentos. Y a veces es muy drástico porque todo eso te produce enfermedades. El moho te produce enfermedades tanto a ti como a los niños.
Garcia asked her landlord for repairs. In the meantime, she got a notice that her rent was going up. After that, she got an eviction notice.
Es una experiencia común. Cuando no pagas aumento y pides arreglos, lo que pasa es desalojo. Es algo que está muy a la orden del día. Todos están trabajando en eso.
Garcia was able to resolve her issue. Now, she and other members from CBI are drafting a renter protection ordinance with help from leaders from Sonoma County's Community Action Partnership. Their ordinance would make rental housing inspections mandatory in the city of Santa Rosa and put more code enforcement officers on the street.
People are really afraid to report. They're afraid of those landlords who might evict them or raise their rent, and so they tend to just kind of live, you know, they either report and then get evicted, or they end up living in whatever poor conditions there are.
CBI held a fundraiser earlier this month to raise awareness about their efforts and support future projects.
Hemos estado haciendo muchas limpiezas en el área de Roseland, hemos platicado con la comunidad, hemos visto la policía que sí está trabajando en el área de Roseland. Sí veo un poco de cambio.
As the housing shortage across the Bay Area becomes more dire, this is a model community members may have to take on in order to see a change.
All right, we're now joined by Derica Marins, Executive Director of Working Partnerships USA, which brings together unions, the faith community, and the people in and around Silicon Valley to solve problems like housing. And also Randy Tsuda is joining us via Skype. He's former Community Development Director of Mountain View and Executive Director of Palo Alto Housing, which builds affordable housing. Darren, tell our viewers what they can do if they want to ask questions for Derica or Randy.
You can connect with us by emailing us at connectthebay@norcalpublicmedia.org. Also, you can call us at our toll-free 1-800 number, which is 1-800-287-2722, and connect with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at NorCal Public Media. A couple of questions here, Steve. One is, what is being done to get managers or owners to rent out places without cockroaches, without rats, humidity problems, so that renters don't get sick? And that's from Noemi Palomino Andrade. Also, a second question we have, how can we prevent gentrification in the Roseland neighborhood of Santa Rosa? And that's from Salvador Sanchez Strawbridge. And he gave us that question through a community event we did with Lo Cien.
Thanks so much, Darren. And Randy, let me give that question to you about gentrification. I know in terms of Palo Alto Housing, the place where you're working down in and around Palo Alto, that gentrification is an issue and that folks who have lived there their entire lives are being forced out of the South Bay. Tell us what your organization is doing to fight gentrification.
Well, as an independent nonprofit entity, we are focused on building affordable housing in the right locations along transit corridors whereby we can strategically build new affordable housing opportunities in locations where our residents have access to transit And we're working closely with the communities in which we're currently developing, like Mountain View, Palo Alto, and Redwood City, in helping them and advising them on ways and policies to put into place that can help minimize and avoid the risk of displacement. This, of course, is one of the key strategies that is involved in the CASA Compact also, is in terms of creating policies that will minimize the risk of displacement.
All right, Derica, now I know that you work, as you say, with unions, the faith community, and others in your community. And I know that gentrification must be very high on the list of everybody there, especially the gentrification that would push working people out of their homes as these tech millionaires that everybody loves to play the villains get their real estate. So what is your organization doing down there?
That's a great question. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we believe that there are a couple of important solutions to this problem. The first is just about power. Low-wage workers, people of color, tenants in our economy and in this region don't have the power and the means to affect solutions. And so we are about organizing folks and bringing them together with politicians and elected officials to ensure their voice is heard. And I don't think it's an easy solution. It's not like there's one magic bullet that if we just do that, it will solve the problem. It really is going to have to be struggled over.
All right, Randy, you know, I know that there's talk of the consequence of the so-called Pottery Barn rule attributed to Colin Powell. If you break it, you own it. And the tech companies, for the first time in my understanding, are really trying to step up and pour tens and hundreds of million dollars into some of the solutions down in Silicon Valley. Can you tell us about some of that?
Well, Steve, I think you're exactly right. I think for the first time that I can remember, tech companies are really beginning to focus on getting involved in solutions to address housing in general and affordable housing specifically. You know, companies like LinkedIn are really playing a leadership role in convincing other companies to invest money in the so-called tech fund. That's a fund that's being set up by Housing Trust Silicon Valley to provide loans for affordable housing developers and first-time home buyers as a way for these companies to really invest in housing solutions in the greater Silicon Valley area. And LinkedIn's leadership is being followed by other companies, prominent companies here in Silicon Valley, like Cisco and Pure Storage, and most recently, NetApp.
All right, and don't forget, if you want to call in and ask a question, you can call 1-800-287-2722 or email us at connectthebay@norcalpublicmedia.org. Now, number 5 on this CASA points, the minimum zoning near transit. Why is it good for working people that their housing be near transit? Maybe to some that's obvious, but there must be some layers to the answer to that question.
Yeah, there are definitely layers to that question. I mean, I think it goes without saying that all workers in the economy want to be near transit to be able to get to good jobs. And the reality is many of the best jobs are located in places that are hard, especially for low-wage workers who get pushed out to get to. We also have to remember there's another important layer around many low-income communities and communities of color along transit lines are very worried that any policy proposals will gentrify their neighborhoods and push them further out. So while this is an important compact item, an important policy item, we have to have the tools to bring the voiceless to those decisions and get it right. And I think that's why there's a lot of controversy around this particular proposal.
Okay, Randy, before we let you go from down in Palo Alto, do you have a final word about why, you know, you have worked for municipalities, you've worked for the tech business. Why are you spending your time now at Palo Alto Housing building affordable housing?
Well, I think we can all agree that the issue of our time right now in the Bay Area is housing. And I really felt that if I could find the right opportunity, I really wanted to focus and play a role in building affordable housing and creating change in Silicon Valley. So that's why I've made the transition from the public sector into affordable housing development.
Well, thanks for doing that for all the people down there who I know are depending on your answers to these questions. Now, Derica, there are many potential solutions to the housing crisis as there are problems. And in a moment, we're going to see a story about Habitat for Humanity up here, creating smaller homes, what they call Sonoma cottages, to be one solution. And that connects with point number 4 of the Casa Compact, which I know is removal of regulatory barriers to accessory dwelling units. Here is that story we're going to have about the creation of those dwelling units. And we'd like you to look at this, and we'll talk afterwards.
Great.
Sonoma County is facing an acute shortage of affordable housing, making it increasingly difficult for many to continue residing in the North Bay. Mike Johnson, the CEO of Habitat for Humanity in Sonoma County, is surveying the site where Habitat will soon be installing temporary housing for survivors of the October 2017 wildfires. These Sonoma cottages are a pilot program.
So these are a couple of the units. There's going to be about 8 or 10 of them that are about the same size, 450, 550 square feet.
4 companies are building distinct Sonoma cottage prototypes, according to plans by architect Marianne Cusado. This Gigacrete cottage employs steel frames and proprietary building materials. Habitat is evaluating the benefits of each prototype for future projects.
A unit like this, for example, you can see up around the eaves, there's no wood to catch fire. Right? So in a traditional building, that's typically where the fire tends to grab hold, is under the eaves. So a building like this is going to be a lot more fire resistant than a typical build technology would be.
Connect Homes provided the second cottage that Mike is surveying today.
This is a sort of a typical layout. We're in the living room of this unit at the moment. So when you walk back here, you've got bathrooms and 2 bedrooms. All right? So this would be the bathroom area, the living room and kitchen would all be, and 1 master bedroom. So even though it's small and compact, you can get a family of 3 or 4 people into this one unit, 550 square feet.
As Habitat ramps up its efforts in Sonoma County, the nonprofit is also broadening its focus.
Habitat's mission generally is to serve people who are in the 60 to 80% of AMI, right, which is area median income, or in the low income category. But we also want to look at ways that we can serve people in the moderate income category, because they're struggling just as hard to make it in this expensive county as people who are in the lower income categories. And those folks don't have access to a lot of the benefits and services that people in the low income category do.
Habitat will construct a prefab factory and warehouse this year. Mike says building smaller, faster, cheaper, higher, and denser will be crucial to expand local home ownership.
More rental housing is great, but it's not the same living in a rental as it is living in a home that you own. When you can afford your mortgage, you can save, you can invest in your children's educations, you can invest in your community, you can volunteer, you can do all sorts of things that folks who are struggling to make ends meet can't do.
A shortage of local construction labor is another building impediment.
There's a lot of building going on now, which is a great thing, but what that means is that it's difficult to find people to build. We're about 19,000 skilled workers short to build the 30,000 or so homes that we need to recover.
Habitat is partnering with the Santa Rosa Junior College to train students in prefab construction.
Santa Rosa Junior College's students will be working side by side with Habitat staff in our prefab factory to learn prefabrication skills. And then those same folks would go on to help build on Habitat work sites.
Nancy Miller, the director of the Junior College's Regional Adult Education Program, is leading construction training development.
One of the areas of biggest need for workforce preparation prior to the fires in October 2017 was construction trades, including landscaping. We just didn't have enough workers in that area.
The JC hopes to increase the number of students it trains in construction-related fields from 150 students a year to 500.
Increased wages and full-time employment are two of the goals that we're hoping to accomplish by training people in the construction trades. Our building plan is really over a 10-year period, so we're trying to address long-term employment in construction as well.
Nancy and her colleagues are pursuing funding to build a construction training facility on campus. Students will train in the Habitat Prefab Factory until the school's own facilities come online.
Having a partner like Habitat provides a realistic opportunity as opposed to building a shed or a bird box or a picnic bench. We're building homes, and so there's a realistic process.
Finding better, faster ways of doing this kind of work is the only way we're going to build our way out of this situation.
Habitat plans to build 600 homes in the next 8 years.
The idea with prefabbing is that you can build parts of a home ahead of things like foundations and site work, right? So even before you begin grading a site like the one we're on now, you can begin building panels for the houses that will eventually be built on that site. So it really compresses the build times, right? Which saves a lot of money and allows us to build more houses each year.
Habitat remains optimistic about prefab's potential, but challenges remain. Mike says many builders and planning departments are not yet accustomed to prefab building methods, slowing down the widespread adoption of these new technologies.
We've been doing things the same basic way for 50 years now. So the technology exists to do things differently. It's changing the way we think. That's the hard part.
And here's one more visit to Darren Lashelle at the social media desk.
Hey, thanks, Steve. We have a question just come in on Instagram. This is a North Bay question from Bay Blue Eyes, who asks, what needs are being met for the disabled and the handicapped that are living on low-income housing in the Sonoma County, Santa Rosa area and under the same stress as everyone else? Also, we have a South Bay question. How can we pressure local governments to establish temporary housing solutions such as sanctioned encampments and also safe parking programs? Finally, a question, if you could wave a magic wand and enact any regulatory or policy change, what would you do? And that is another viewer question from the South Bay.
All right, thanks so much, Darren. I think we're going to give you the magic wand, Derica, and wave it.
So that's a great question. I'm going to give so instead of a regulatory policy or a policy change, because I'm not going to pick one, there isn't one. If I had a magic wand, I would make it so that elected officials today have to deal with all 3 Ps in their policy solutions to set us up for 10 years from now.
So produce housing,
produce more housing at all levels, preserve affordable housing for folks, and protect renters in place and families in place.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce John Deloso. He's the mayor of Cotati, which is just 5 minutes down the freeway from us.
Yes, indeed.
And some of the mayors and elected officials in some of the smaller places around the Bay have some real concern about the CASA Compact, and I would ask you to share some of those with us, John.
Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Yeah, you know, there's a couple of concerns that jump out to a number of us right away. The first one is the scalability of this CASA Compact. When we look at near transit orientation, there's the ability to go 5 stories, and with density bonuses up to 7 stories. And that may work in some larger density cities in the Bay Area, and will definitely not work, in my opinion, in a small town that has 9,000 people, such as mine, which is Cotati. So scalability is something that I think it can still be looked at and still addressed. There's plenty of time for this. We're not speeding this through in the next few months. I think we need to take our time and make sure what we're doing it right. And also the loss of local control. I have a concern with the loss of local control, the voice of the people. Local government was set up so local people can make these decisions. And here in the North Bay, There was a local decision that was made a long time ago, and that's not to build a nuclear power plant at Bodega Bay. Why are we in such a rush?
Well, John, I mean, nuclear power plant and housing for poor and working people, I don't see those as equivalent. I'm not sure why you brought that in.
So I would say they're not equivalent, but they are on the level of having local voices. You know, we had a nuclear regulatory agency that was a federal agency that wanted to come in and do this, but it was the local constituents that fought it down. I'm not saying this is to be fought down, but should be discussed.
Okay, Derica, let me give you a short opportunity to talk to John and to try to get him on the side of working together, which I'm sure he'd like to be.
Yeah, actually, I appreciate John's points. I think we all have to recognize that CASA was a process that happened and is now in a new phase. The promise of CASA, I believe, is the coalition of the willing across the divide of labor, small cities, big cities, developers, coming together to say none of us have the option to not do all 3 Ps, to not really figure out how we're going to dig in. And so I think that your points are valid, and what we have to really say is, though, how do we get out of our local point of view and work together?
Okay, well, thank you both, and that's it for our first edition of Connect the Bay, Solutions to the Housing Crisis. I want to thank Derica Marins, John Deloso, and Randy Tsuda and David Rabbit, who joined us earlier. And for all of you who got in touch with us via social media, we're going to put those questions up on our website. And over the course of the next weeks and even months, we're going to really make an opportunity to dig into those questions about housing, because we know how much housing is a concern of everybody who's been watching us and listening today. So we thank you so much for joining us on Connect the Bay today. And we really appreciate those of you who took the time in public meetings and social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and all our other social media outlets to ask your questions, to tell us you care, and to make this a part of your Sunday evening. So long until June 30th. That's the next time we'll Connect the Bay.
That's
what we do.
That's what we do. Oh my God. Wow, talk about short.
You're watching Northern California Public Media, made possible by viewers like you.
On Masterpiece Mystery.
This is the most dangerous, the most despicable human being that I have ever encountered.
What is this? We can't do this.
Is this supposed to be a game?
We're going to have endless fun, Mr. Holmes, aren't we?
No, not endless. This monster must be ended.
Sherlock on Masterpiece Mystery.
Wednesday night at 8 on Northern California Public Media.